Good evening, folks, and welcome to the February 5th, 2024 Board of Selectmen meeting. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Disconnect the microphone, so sorry. All right, we'll call the meeting to order and declare that we do have a quorum. Ethan will not be joining us this evening. Any conflicts of interest, please disclose as they may arise. Adjustments to the agenda.
With my liquor license.
You'll be abstaining from the vote. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sam. Adjustments to the agenda. So we have a couple of folks via Zoom land. It looks like Matt, you are up first for the Aquatic Village Transportation Study.
Okay, thank you. And I'll turn it over to Joe to introduce and lead the conversation, and I can add or chime in when necessary.
Thanks, Matt. So this is a kind of a follow-up discussion to the last time the board talked about Aquatic Village Transportation Study. I did reach out to Matt with the questions that I took away from that meeting. He responded right away with an email. And I'm sure you've had a chance to read that by now. Essentially, what I heard at the last meeting was, let's take the bridge out, or the extension of the bridge, let's take that out. Let's wait for DOT in 20 or 30 years to, when they rebuild the bridge, maybe they'll put in an accessory or a sidebar to the bridge. The other item that came up was raised sidewalks. The sidewalks with curbs didn't seem to be what the group at the time was interested in. You asked me to think about or get information about flush sidewalks, or painted flush sidewalks, basically for most of the project area, as opposed to raised sidewalks. So Matt has, given us some feedback from the DOT on those items. And if you read, I don't want to speak for Matt, but it looks like unless it's a cohesive project that adds a lot of pedestrian and safety value, the DOT is probably not, they're saying it's probably not really attractive for earmark money. It's not, they're not saying they won't work with us, they're just saying it probably is not the right category for this project if it's going to be parsed out in smaller pieces to achieve more finite goals, as opposed to building a whole system that goes from Route 4 and 16 to the post office, and then also from parking lot to Haynes Landing. So that's the follow-up that I got from Matt. Really, it's up to the board if you want to continue with the flush sidewalk discussion. It's probably local money that's going to do that. If you want to reassess the project as originally studied, that's also an option. I know you've received some feedback on that, including winter maintenance being, something the town have to think about. Or you can pick elements of the project that, probably would require more local money, but there may be different safety improvement projects. For instance, the sidewalk, or crosswalk rather, from 4 and 16 Gateway to the fish launch, fish screen boat launch, might be a smaller DOT package, and I don't know which one that would fit into. Matt, you might be able to help me out with that. But so I guess those are kind of the options. Go with what was originally proposed in the feasibility study, or cut it down into smaller pieces and probably take less grant money and get less of that project done as originally discussed.
Does the board have any questions for Matt or any, this is an item, a consent item under 7 later in the agenda, so I don't suspect that we'll do anything at this juncture of the agenda. I just wanted to offer Matt the opportunity for to answer any additional questions that may have come out of reading this email response from him.
I just have one thing that I couldn't figure out the answer to on my own research. I'm looking at the timeline, Matt. So I noticed that in the analysis, they say that the first meeting was, I think it was in January of 2023, but what I found was the town of Rangeley submitted a request for proposal in August of 2022. And the proposal due date was September 9th of 2022. And then there was a kickoff event, 12/15/2022, a study team meeting, April 27th of 23. And then it went to the original, timeline in June and then the subsequent meetings. But what was the impetus? Because that's what everyone seems to be asking me is why, was this a request from, the people of Rangeley? Was it suggested because we felt like there was a problem we were trying to fix, or was it just there was grant money available?
So there's probably a question I can answer better than that, Madam Chair, although you can chime in if you'd like. The catalyst for this project is the downtown revitalization plan, which spells out the need for, or desire for improvements for pedestrian and traffic safety issues. It also calls for streetscape improvements in the downtowns of Rangeley and Wausau. DOT naturally picked up the town of Rangeley when they were looking for or reaching out to town and explaining or offering what they have for the partnership initiatives, the planning partnership initiative, village partnership initiative. So they came to us and said, what do you have for projects? Is there something we can partner on? So that initial discussion took place in this room. And we being staff at that time and DOT talked about how we might frame that up into manageable pieces to conduct a study. Then I brought it to the Board of Selectmen. They authorized the steps that you just laid out there a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an effort to perform or cross off the list some of those items that are in the downtown revitalization plan that the Economic Opportunity Committee and others have put forth and talked about for some period of time. All in the interest really of protecting and promoting the economy of Rangeley as a destination.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any additional questions from the board? Any questions from the public?
Are we discussing like the boat ramp too right now? or-
That's gonna be next, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yep. No, you're good. So the Aquatic Village Transportation Study is under a consent item, so we'll deal with that. And what steps we think we want to take forward later in the agenda. Next, adjustments to the agenda, Jeff Preble. Aquatic Park Project and Aquatic Boat Ramp. Jeff was with us. There he is.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there in person there tonight.
All right. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Joe, did you want to kind of give an overview before we kind of hand over things to Jeff, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to give an introduction. If Jeff has a slideshow. Jeff, I just made it so you can screen share if you are interested in doing that.
Yep, great, thank you.
While you're doing that, I'll let the board know and the public know that you're here tonight to talk about 2 projects that Mike Pierce has been working on for us. He's done several over the years, but tonight you're going to talk about the Aquatic Park Improvement Project which is a freestanding project separate from the village study that we talked about a moment ago. And then the fish screen boat launch project, which is something that we are working with the Boating Facilities Fund on with a grant, getting 26,000 and change for a grant to have design work done on that particular location. So Jeff's gonna talk about both of those in his presentation. I believe he's gonna start with, well, Jeff, I'll let you start, whatever you start with.
All right, fair enough. Thank you. Yeah, we wanted to give the board an update here on the two projects that we have going there in Aquasic, being the park project, phase 1 of that, and also the improvements to the boat ramp into Rangeley Lake. So we're going to talk about the boat ramp first and kind of give you an overall overview of what that project entails. We've got a couple of permit things we got to clear coming up here. We've developed an opinion of what the construction cost for the project is going to be, and then we'll do the same kind of thing for the park project and talk about schedule a little bit and address any questions or comments that you have. So existing boat ramp is just a few pictures here taken. It's a tight area to get into. The ramp into the water, some of the concrete planks are starting to deteriorate. So it's time to take a look at this and see what we can make for upgrades to make this a little easier to get boats in and out of the water, and make it a little bit safer as you get out onto Route 16, Route 4 up above. So the overall concept is pretty similar to the boat ramp project that was done down at the Lakeside Park just a few years ago. There's a couple things here that we want to point out. So we'll be pretty much replacing in kind the existing ramps. There'll be a riprap kind of apron that goes around the planks, similar to what was done down in the downtown boat ramp. The existing bulkhead that's there that the dock system attaches to is in fairly poor condition, so that's going to get replaced. A couple bollards added. New paving throughout the ramp area. The other thing that would like to try to do is to install a precast block retaining wall along the shoulder that's on the approach to the bridge, to see if we can buy, at least a couple of feet of extra maneuvering space for getting boats and trailers in and out of the water. So we've shown that. This isn't all that high. It's only a few feet above grade, so it's not a big structure, but at least it widens out the area a little bit so that people can maneuver a little bit easier there. All right. This is just a blow up of the ramp area here. One thing they like to see is some edge planks that are put along the length of the ramp. And these are basically the same ramp pieces that are used for the boats and trailers to get in and out. They're just set up on edge, and they cut the little tabs off just to kind of hold everything in together. The sandwich is pretty much the same as what was utilized before, with the different materials, the crushed stone and the riprap and that sort of thing. And the grade down into the water, just kind of following existing grade from the survey that we got, falls right in line with what their recommendations are at around 12.5%. So we don't have to do a lot of work within the water to get that grade achieved. And we got a little riprap spill area here for a prop wash and that sort of thing as people load their boats onto trailers. All right. This is just a copy of a snip from one of our site plans that we developed. One thing that we'll do as part of this project is have the contractor install a turbidity curtain around the work area. So that'll be surround the whole area to contain any sediments or anything like that, just to the work area itself. Again, we're showing the riprap apron around, the edge plank set on edge coming up here, the new abutment. And a couple of bollards there at the start of that. All right, so a couple of approvals that we need for this project. One, the project qualifies for a Natural Resource Protection Act permit by rule for the boat ramp. There's certain standards and stuff that we need to follow for that. And we meet those standards, so that kind of streamlines the process through the DEP. When we submit that, it'll also go to the Army Corps of Engineers. And there's a little bit more information that they require that DEP doesn't, but you know, that's pretty straightforward permit from them, particularly where we're just replacing an existing facility. And as part of that process, they'll renew the submerged land lease. There was probably one to begin with for this facility, but we haven't been able to get our hands on that, so they'll be automatically renewed as part of this process. The retaining wall piece, that's going to require what they call a right-of-way variance from DOT. We've talked with the region engineer about the project and what we wanted to do here. He didn't seem to have any issues or anything with what we were proposing. So that's just a matter of filing the paperwork with the DOT folks. They sign off on it, and then it will be ready to roll. Like I say, this is only just a few blocks high. There's a cap block that goes over the top to provide a finished look. There's a bunch of these ready rock retaining wall pieces in various places around, so they're fairly attractive, and they work pretty well. We've used them on a number of projects. So opinion of cost, we've got things kind of broken down here into various different items. We're looking at doing this as a lump sum contract. We'll get a lump sum price from contractors when it goes out to bid, and they'll provide a schedule of values on and breaking out the various different items so that we can judge pay recs and that sort of stuff by as the project proceeds. We're looking at someplace, you know, in the $250,000 range for the prices to come in. That's just the construction costs. That's not any construction engineering or inspection or any of those types of services. So any questions on that before we move on to the park?
Yes, yeah.
And you said that this wall, is going to create more space, it won't, and it doesn't take away, it makes it easier to maneuver, correct?
Yes, we're gonna go back to the site plan.
It was just hard to see in the pictures of where.
Right. Yeah. So this is gonna go into the, it'd probably be better to go to the pictures there at first. So it's really gonna be kind of lined up in here. So, you know, kind of taper off by the junction 16 sign as we kind of match back into grade. But this little flat area that is shown, you guys can see my mouse. I'm gonna put the laser pointer on here. Through this area here, so the wall would be set back probably up through this area. So we gain, you know, a couple of feet for maneuverability. Everybody all set with that?
Yes.
Questions?
No.
Does Mark Beauregard have a question? Was that who's hand I can see?
Yeah.
I was just wondering if there was could be any benefit to the other aquatic improvement pedestrian thing if that retaining wall was brought up higher and filled in level across the top, that it may complement some pedestrian access by being able to move the guardrail a little further back, closer to the retaining wall than where it presently is.
Yeah. I think what was talked about as part of the transportation plan, Mark, was the pedestrian crossing across the river was going to be on the north side of the river, just to make the connections and stuff work from the parking area at 4 and 16, kind of blend in with the rest of the connections and further down into Aquasic Village. So You know, whether or not they're gonna try to widen the bridge or put its own pedestrian bridge adjacent to it or something along that line. I don't think we got to that detail, but that was kind of the original intent, was to have it on that north side rather than this side.
Yes, I understand that. The public meetings I've attended, it didn't seem like that north side approach was well received. So I'm just trying to think if you're gonna do this, if there wasn't any way it could be engineered to provide a benefit at less cost than the one that seems to be being rejected at this time. And just something to think about. I only looked at this thing a few minutes ago, so I don't have any idea or any lean in, but I just thought it was a question worth asking.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that you can do with these block systems is you can remove that top cap piece and then build up additional blocks in the future if you wanted to, and then put the top cap piece back on. So there is some flexibility, you know, if you wanted to raise that grade even more, you know, to come back in the future and do something like that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, move along to Aquatic Park. And so the phase one piece is, you know, looking primarily at the basketball court and tennis court surfaces and fixing those up. There's been a lot of frost action out there, you know, and it's caused some cracks and some rocks to kind of rise to the surface, creating some tripping hazards and that sort of thing. So this phase one piece is focused, you know, entirely on these two court systems. And so what we're going to do here to address some of these issues is to take the existing surface off from both courts. We're planning on installing under drainage along from the tennis court down across the basketball court and outlet into the little swale that runs in back here. So there'll be new under drainage to help with the frost action. Yeah, we're gonna remove and replace the existing fence that goes around the tennis courts. It's kind of shown with this outside line here. And another thing that we had talked about adding is a stockade type fence. This will be about 4 feet high, both on each end of the basketball court, just to keep the runaway balls and that sort of stuff from getting too far or going out into the street or something along that line. That's in this the tennis court, we'd end up having kind of a dual use as part of this. It'll be lined for both tennis and pickleball. And you can adjust the colors and that sort of stuff with the surface with this type of system that we're proposing to use. So like I say, the improvements will include the subsurface drainage. We're going to raise the grades of the courts a little bit, putting in the new gravel materials that are going in there. There'll be new pavement that's put down. And then we contacted this Nova Sports System. They're out of Massachusetts, and they do courts and tennis courts and stuff all over New England. And what they had recommended is these Nova acrylic coating systems that they have, and they come out really nice. And there's a couple of pictures here of basketball court and tennis court from a couple of their projects. You can get the acrylic coating and line markings and that sort of stuff in different colors if you want some contrast and that sort of thing. So it's all, up to your choice on what kind of colors and that sort of stuff you end up with. So I've got a copy of the site plans for each of these, and started at the basketball court. So the dash line that you see running up and down the slide here, this is the under drain system. We've kind of purposely set this first one away from the subsurface disposal field that's over here for the restrooms. And then we've got those spaced out. So there's going to be 3 runs of under drain that comes across, ties into a common header at the south edge of the basketball court, and then outlets into the swale below. In between the 2 courts, we're going to create a little slight depression in the air to collect any runoff. Then there's a couple of yard drains that will collect those on top of the under drain system. And then talking with Patrick on the hoops that they'd like to use there. They'll be taking the existing ones, demolishing those and putting new hoops up on each end. Those will be similar to the hoops that were replaced down at the waterfront park. And same picture here for the tennis court. So again, the under drain system that's connecting to the yard drains in between. Those are shown. One thing we were thinking makes sense, and this is, we can decide this during construction as well, is where we're going to put the pedestrian gate to get into the court. Currently, it was located between the tennis court and the basketball court down here. But if you've got parking and stuff along Franklin Street over here, maybe it makes sense to put the pedestrian gate over on that side closer to the parking. But that's something that we can decide at a later date. Like I say, we're gonna take down the existing fence and put that back up once the new court surface is in place, and replace any little pieces and parts that that may be needed. No real permitting issues or anything with the park project phase 1, so that's a good thing. Again, we kind of broke out the major items here on the cost estimate. This project would end up being bid as a unit price work, so we've got items for demolition, we've got items for paving, the gravel materials, the court surface, the line work, and all that type of thing set up in the bid form. And we'd be looking at a project someplace coming in around the $300,000 range for this one. All right, so the next steps. We've got the meeting here tonight. The plans and specs are pretty much ready to go. We'd like to kind of advertise these two projects concurrently and set up the bid opening, hopefully on the same day and coming up in March. And then that'll give you what your project costs and stuff are looking like before your town meeting coming up in June. And then once town meeting hits and funds get approved, then we can start construction and aim to have everything complete by October. There's an in-lake work window for the boat ramp piece, and that's June 1st to the end of September. So we kind of have to hit that time frame for the boat ramp piece of it. That's the basic overview, and anybody has any questions or anything, I'd be happy to answer those.
Questions from the board?
That's good.
I saw all the different kinds of colors on their website. Is there any price? There's no any different picking the colors out and designs. Does that change any of the costs, the protection costs?
As far as I know, it does not. I think you can pick and choose. There's probably a standard set of colors you can pick from. So if you wanted something custom, that may cost you a little extra, but they got a standard palette of colors that you can pick from for the court surfaces.
No, I'm all set.
Anything from the public?
I just had a question. Is anyone looking at grants? Tennis organizations or?
My next question was actually going to be, do we have any, is there any funding funding available through grants or shared?
Yes, Madam Chair. So before I get into that, the numbers that Rebecca and I plugged into the draft budget are the numbers that Jeff went through on the spread on the screen tonight. So those will be in the debt service account, which is a new account this year. We're kind of consolidating it all in one place. So we propose those there. And once the bids go out and come back, then you'll have hard and fast numbers of what's actually going to cost when we go to seek funding. So the question was about grants. The answer is yes. I've been authorized to pursue they have now Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, which is an extension of the National Park Service. The board has given me that authority. It does require town meeting vote prior to actually applying. So that will be a warrant to apply for this grant. It's a reimbursement grant, 50% up to $500,000. So we're going to have to pay up front. We're going to have to come up with the money. It's not TIF eligible. So at this point, my recommendation to the budget committee of the board would be to borrow that through a construction loan. And then try to fast track the reimbursement if we're successful with the grant. So yes, it's eligible. It's 50% up to 500,000.
And is that just the portion of the ramp project?
This is for the aquatic part. The ramp itself is a totally different grant that we already have 27,000-ish for the design. We're chipping in, I think, 30% for the design that we can apply next year for construction. It's the same ratio up to a certain amount. I just can't remember off the top of my head. It won't cover the whole 250 road facilities fund. So that would be another construction loan, most likely. And you know, we can talk through the budget process. That's the mechanism that you prefer if you'd like to raise and appropriate directly for that. There's not a lot of reserve funds available for that whole launch. I don't think there's any set aside for that.
So Jeff mentioned that this was just construction costs when he was talking about the boat ramp. Is that also the same for the park? These are just construction cost figures and don't include any.
I believe that's correct.
That is correct, yes. Yep. Currently contracted through the bidding services, and if you wanted us to provide some CA work and inspection, we can provide that, you know, part-time or full-time or however you'd like.
At an additional cost, correct, Jeff?
Yeah.
Mark, so sorry, Mark had his hand up in the middle.
Oh, thank you. I had a question about the drainage. When you raise the elevation of the courts, couldn't really see what the difference in elevation would be from the new height of the courts to the high water table in the area of where the drainage pipes would outlet.
We're missing that slide, just so you know. We're missing these two drainage system pieces.
I added those in here at the last minute today.
From our packet, and then there's the third slide that you talked about under the boat ramp that is not in our packet.
We'll make those available on the website.
Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, let me go to a different thing here. We can talk about that. What was out of that one? All right, we can zoom right in here. Yeah, so the top surface, the existing surface of the tennis court there, Mark, is at elevation 1534. And we're gonna have the corners, and there's a few areas where it's up higher in here, but that's a basic elevation. We're gonna have that up at 1535, almost 1536 at the corners. And the under drain system is down here at 1533. So we're about, you know, a foot below existing grade essentially around the tennis court area. Like we say, we're raising that grade up. Does require us to kind of do some grading between here and Franklin Street, and but we can fit that in without affecting the existing drainage swale that runs from Franklin out across Rangeley here. But and then that connects down here on the other end of the basketball court, all three under drained on this common header, and then outlets to an 8-inch storm drain line.
Did that
That'll
answer
help
your
draw the
question,
water
Mark?
table down at least a little bit to help keep that frost action down.
Okay, thank you. The reason for my question was I've observed some drainage work around Rangeley when it looks like the calculations were figured during dry weather, but then when Rangeley Lake is above at the full mark or a little above, the drains don't function well, and just to avoid that type of thing, by building surfaces up a little higher, you can putting a little extra fill in goes a long way for solve future problems.
Yeah, exactly. Is that wet area down here further kind of between Franklin and Route 17 that comes in there that tends to pond up a little bit because it's
right?
have a lot of relief there.
So I just asking to see if there's enough fill being, if they're raising the elevation of the courts high enough that we won't have future drainage problems there during wet periods of
Right.
not above normal high water tables.
Yeah. Yeah, that's our intent, and the basketball court's going to be similar. It's roughly the same elevation here at 1534, and we'll be at 1535.7. So we'll be up about, about 1.5 feet or so.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, on the website, the page that had the cost projections, it looks like the total for what Jeff was talking about was 450,000, not the 311. I'm just wondering if there's been a change, or is Jeff talking about a different?
For which portion of the project, Paul? Sorry.
For priority 1, it's for the park side.
Oh.
It's got repaired tennis and basketball courts, tennis court fencing, and under drain additions, and it adds up to 450. That's on the website.
Can you repeat that question again? Sorry, I didn't quite catch it all.
Yeah. So the portion that he is looking at looks to be full scale project, looks to be the whole project when we were.
That's dated several months ago.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that was
So
what they
it's-
were initially looking at, but Jeff, I'm sure could elaborate if he could hear the question. Jeff, the question is, in the original document that you put out, this phase seems to be $450,000, and now it seems to be boiled down to 300,000. Is there any explanation for that, or?
No, it's just when we started putting some, hard and fast numbers to it and, actual quantities and that sort of stuff, we ended up coming in much lower than we initially expected during the initial study phase. So hopefully we're right and that carries through to the actual bids that come in for the
Right.
project.
And that's a good point that Jeff brings up. As I mentioned, the bids will tell you what the project's actually going to cost. And you can make that determination then, whether the community can afford it or you have to do something different. You're not obligated to accept any of those bids when they come in.
And will we have a better idea of design costs and everything else when we get to that stage of this as well, Joe? I mean, I feel like putting these numbers in the budget is putting us at a shortfall already because we don't have the additional cost. If this is just construction, we all know there's a design phase, there's a
Right.
implementation phase, there's a
Permitting phase. And, everything.
yeah, I mean, there's so many phases to these type projects, and each of those phases tend to cost us money. So this, to me, isn't real dollar amount of what these projects are gonna cost, and I really think we need those numbers.
Yeah, we can package that up and get that into you. We've got the design cost and bidding piece already established with the town. So the only additional portion is just putting together anything for construction administration and some inspection effort.
You're not going to find, at least as far as I can say and see from past conversations, you're not gonna find any opposition to these projects being a top priority. I just wanna make sure that we have a clear indication of their cost.
Well, we'll put an estimate together on what those services might be and get those into Joe and Tracy, and we'll have everything included, construction, the engineering and project closeout and the whole works.
So Joe, at this point, I'm sorry, Sam, I thought I saw your hand at one point. At this point, what do you need from this board? Do you need the essential directive to move forward with the bid advertisement? Is that what we're looking for from tonight?
The action items, there are a couple on the voting facilities fund.
Okay.
One of them is to authorize me to sign the waiver with DOT for the blocks. That requires a waiver, and if you authorize me to sign it, I can get that to Jeff and get that to DOT. So the other one has to do with the grant for the voting facilities fund.
Right, so both of those are related to the grant
Yeah,
project.
so if the board, you're not required to direct me to put this out to bid, it's kind of a foregone conclusion that that's going to happen, but if you would like to solidify that in the record, then that's perfectly acceptable.
Any further questions from the board?
Yeah, I just had a further clarification, and I'm sure Wright Pierce looked at this, but there's also a lot of drainage problems, not on the courts, but kind of in front of the playground area, and if we're raising up the courts, are we gonna create more of a problem down there?
Yeah, there is some puddling that takes place out in front of the playground and doesn't quite get out to some of the drainage. It's out toward Cary Road and Franklin out there. But I think with the, go back to this screen. I think with the addition of, the yard drains in between the two courts, we're gonna catch a lot of the drainage there. We're creating a little bit of a swale to direct drainage off the tennis court between the septic system and the tennis court and bringing that into the drainage up at Franklin and Rangeley here into that swale. So I don't anticipate there'll be a lot of additional runoff but I think you're right. We're gonna have to do some drainage in future phases in front of the playground to get this wet area over and along the fence line and that sort of stuff to kind of get into the drainage system that's out toward Franklin here.
And yes, Sam.
And what were you doing about the fencing as far as you're taking down all the fencing and putting it back up or replacing it or?
Yeah, it's in decent shape for the most part. There's a few the poles and things that are bent in a few areas. So our intent was to remove the existing fence, stockpile it on site. We can reuse the existing fabric and connections and such. And then when the new courts get done, we'll put that fencing back up. We have a bid item worked into the bid book to replace any poles or uprights that are damaged during removal. So we got a mechanism to update those as we need to get everything back in place.
Any further questions for Jeff at this point? Any questions from the? Okay, thank you so much, Jeff. We'll take care of the consent items under item 7 when we get there. Moving on, review and approve meeting minutes for the January, yes?
Madam Chair, I just would like to request a second executive session under item 13.
Oh, sorry, that was an adjustment to the agenda. Yep, I apologize. I had that note in front of me. Under adjustments to the agenda, we will be adding a second executive session
Prior to the one listed on.
prior to the one listed on the agenda. All right, review and approve meeting minutes, the January 16th, 2024 Board of Selectmen meeting.
Motion approved the minutes of January 16th meeting.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Wendy. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Minus the absent gentleman, of course. And the January 22nd, 2024 Board of Selectmen training.
Motion approved the minutes of January 22nd BOS training.
Motion by Jim, second by Sam. All those in favor? That is unanimous. All right, any public to speak on a non-agenda item? Boards and committees, we've been provided with the meeting minutes.
Ethna,
Yes.
Madam Chair. I had one question.
Is it a non-agenda item?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, I was wondering what the status was of the town dock project.
Madam Chair, the road, as I understand it, has been plowed in. The winter road to the project site has been plowed in, and Patrick's report to me was that when the contractor wraps up something at their site on the coast for the next couple of weeks, they intend to be here in town if the weather permits.
does that answer your question?
I wasn't sure I heard him, so he's expecting it to start sometime in a couple of weeks? Is that the
report that
timeline?
I got recently, yes, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Subject.
Thank
to
you very
weather
much.
conditions.
thank you.
All right, anything further on non-agenda items? Okay, moving on, boards and committees. We've been provided with the meeting minutes for the planning board and the ordinance committee, regular meetings. And moving into consent items, liquor license for Farmhouse Barn.
Motion to approve the liquor license for Farmhouse Barn.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Wendy. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Moose Alley, liquor license renewal for the Moose Alley.
Motion to approve the liquor license for Moose Alley.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Wendy. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous.
One abstain.
That's right,
abstention.
one abstention. You mentioned that, didn't you? Right. And event permits, Rangeley Skating Club and Chamber submitted an event permit for the Winter Palooza.
Event permit for Winter Palooza, pending park commission approval.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Wendy. Any discussion? No announcement, no nothing?
I'm just curious about the process, because it's my first time assisting with this, and so the park commission also.
We're an advisory board, the park commission, yes, the events, the applications for anything in the park come to us first, and then push it up to the selectmen, so.
Got it,
They were just meeting here before we had a chance to meet at our meeting, so.
okay,
Backwards this time.
got it, and so then is that another meeting?
It's coming up,
15.
18th. Oh, no, yeah, 15th, sorry. That's 15th. Meeting.
Okay, and Winter Palooza is scheduled to start on the, it's scheduled to be on the 18th. Okay,
I don't anticipate any problem.
Okay.
but-
but, so we would officially be able to pick up that permit on, if it's approved by them, on Friday the 16th? Am I following everything?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay,
All those in favor? That is unanimous. All right. Thank you for being in attendance. Aquasic Village Transportation Study.
Coming back around.
Yep.
Groundhog's Day.
You know.
What's our pleasure, folks? Sounds like we're not gonna get a whole lot of help money-wise, just because that's the nature of the beast. If we don't go with the entire project, if we piecemeal out the ones we wanted to piecemeal out. How important is safety of our pedestrians? It is so important to remember that Aquasic is a village within the town of Rangeley. They are one and the same, and they need to be treated as such, and we need to have downtown safe for everyone in both centers. We are so lucky and so fortunate to have two center focal points of our communities to offer to folks. So I think I've made it very clear that for me, the safety issue is of the utmost importance. However, we choose to move forward and address that is at the pleasure of the board in its entirety. I am a single member of the majority rule board and will go whatever direction that this board feels is best to go, but I do think there needs to be some changes. So however we approach that. Do I think the full-scale project needs to happen? No.
We've obviously heard from enough folks at Aquasic to know that raised sidewalks down there are gonna probably be more of a headache than help. Doing some painted sections. So we have safe walking lanes. I'm all for that. But you're right, it appears that it's gonna be out of pocket for what little amount of that plan that we want to implement. We're gonna be
ourselves,
Yeah.
it looks like so. But I think something needs to be done. Safety-wise.
Do we possibly want to wait until after the park section's done, and see how that, as far as funding goes and everything, and see the spacing. I don't think much spacing is being changed, but you just don't need to bring, with parking, I think is a big issue, if you put curbs all the way up that way, it's gonna take away a lot. I don't know, it's just waiting. And, putting that on the back burner and doing the boat ramp project, and then a crosswalk to that from 16 to that, gradually seeing how that goes, and then, step by step, moving forward with access to the village with, this doesn't scare me with the painted sidewalks. I don't think that's gonna be much of a hassle as far as maintaining. We do that with the roads all the time. But I just don't want to, jump to everything at once. I don't agree with that. The other thing is the other parking space on Route 4 to Haynes Landing, creating some kind of safe back pedestrian, I think is much more unsafe. But not all the way down, just to Bald Mountain Road.
Right.
With the overs to that stop sign.
I had a question regarding that too. Did we ever find out, we were gonna ask at the workshop, even if we had the ability to
Why?
get land on both sides of the road to do that, because we thought right of ways were not going to be granted, so.
I'm pretty sure we flushed out that the red dotted lines were the right of ways that were determined prior to the study. So anything within the red dotted lines was in the right of way. I don't know.
I agree with the majority of our, comments here. I think pedestrian safety is paramount to our responsibility here. I read through this entire report again for like the third time today. I was trying to figure out, okay, what's the meat? Where are we getting at? And the most intense area is, right where 17 comes into the village. And if you look at it's on page 12 of the actual assessment. There's maroon, or I don't know, magenta dots, and then there's little brown dots. Brown dots are deer strikes, and magenta is people going off the road. This is considered a safe intersection. Even though we had said, and the public had weighed in saying that if you just widen this one curve so that the trucks can actually take an easier corner and their line of vision is better going down towards, Cary Road. I think getting pedestrians from the parking lot over to the boat ramp is important. I'm all for the painted areas because, sometimes you build these things and people don't even use them. That happens with salamander tunnels, really good intention, but they don't go in the tunnel. So I think, a walkway that's designated from the parking lot near Haynes Landing down to the boat launch is super important too. But $8 million, and I know it wouldn't be all on our dime, just seems like a heck of a lot of money to be put into just this part of town when the people that actually own businesses and have weighed in on this already say that some of the recommendations would be really difficult to work around and manage. And, we're snowy, we have trailers, we have logging trucks, and curb cuts randomly placed just because the other ones don't work is silly in my mind.
So that doesn't sound like a whole lot of consent.
I think we could do it like piecemeal, like the painting sounds legitimate to me. And, maybe if we can make some sidewalks, work from the parking lot near, the Rangeley Lake boat ramp. And we would have to change the speed, as you mentioned in the last meeting, I think, Madam Chair, for the crosswalk, because that's not there, which that's a problem. And changing the speed just by, kinetic energy would reduce the, potential, problem that would be there.
Which also needs to be done lower at the.
Right.
closer to Haynes Landing, where they go back up to 40 or 45, which is crazy.
Mhm.
They have to, that's pretty backwards.
At Haynes Landing, you get through the coops and then it jumps up.
Yeah, I think that the downtown revitalization plan is an excellent plan. I really do. I think sometimes you get excited about grant money and then you get something that, you had this beautiful vision and then you get something that's like, well, that might fix some of the problems, but it's way too big for what we were thinking,
So I think we're in agreement that we are gonna do little baby steps and projects. Is that?
That's what I am hearing,
Yeah.
folks.
And we
that-
have a lot of intensity working down in that area right now already. One of the things that I've heard, repeatedly is we need more parking down there. So, if if you're
That's
gonna
both
dump
ends.
money into something,
That's both ends.
Maybe we should-
always need more.
right, so
On
maybe
both
we should be
ends.
thinking about, is there any way to obtain the land so that we can, accommodate the festivals that are big economic drivers for that community?
One of the, Madam Chair, if I could just add
Yes,
one little
please.
thought on that. One of the conversations early on was that the town owns the 4 and 16 boat launch. And I know that's a long way for a 3-year-old to walk from there to Boston Park. That's probably not what we were thinking about when we thought of that being parking that already exists. It's typically underutilized, but that was part of the intent on connecting that with points west.
Mhm.
Whether it's the church or Gingerbread House or River's Edge, or somebody going all the way to the post office, which is less likely on a day when it's not busy. But of course, that was all discussion before we knew it was gonna cost $3.5 million to get across the bridge.
Right.
So some of those things were considered early on. How do we capitalize on the parking we already own that's not being utilized as much as it could be? Because it's a big city problem that Rangeley has, a very rural area. Where are we gonna park out there? How do people get from where we can park legally to where they're going?
Mhm.
So it sounds like you're going in a direction here. Matt has been very patient with us and also very persistent. He has folks in the administration at DOT that he has to keep in the loop. I think the reason that he and I have been kind of persistent in bringing this back to you is there's a deadline looming for congressionally directed spending. It sounds to me like, we're probably, Matt, not gonna be able to do that. I'll let the board make that, vote here in a while, but kind of sounds like we're not going in that direction. But should we talk for a minute, Matt, about what other programs, and very quickly, what other programs might be available to the town for some of these smaller sections of this project, or do you want to defer that to a different date?
I'll defer that decision to the board, but I'm happy to answer questions about what programs might be available for pieces and sort of which portions of the project Maine DOT wouldn't participate in at all if it wasn't done holistically. Sorry for any background noise. Would you like me to share that feedback now?
Yes, please, Matt.
Okay, sure. So the program that we would consider, I think, an application from Rangeley on for some state level assistance and perhaps federal, depending on how the project was scoped, was the area along Route 16, which is obviously a state highway. Sorry, from the corner of 16 along 17, right? The state highway, is that right? Or 4. I should refamiliarize myself with these route numbers.
You're up.
From the parking area, I'm looking at my screen here, which is not helpful to you. From the boat launch at the corner of 16, from the parking to the boat launch on the Route 16 end of the project. That could be eligible for our transportation alternatives program, which we accept applications for every summer. It is a federally funded program, so it's 80% federal, 10% state and local each, which is again, a great, 10 cents on the dollar for the project costs for that portion. The bridge itself is tough. I understand the decision of the community is to wait until the state does a bridge project there and include any pedestrian level stuff in that scope. We don't have a fund necessarily to build a separated bridge for pedestrians only, although that TAP program may be eligible. That would be a hard sell. That would be a lot of the funds that we actually, I think it's more than what we receive from the feds in a single year. And of course, there's a connectivity piece from all the sidewalks. So we wouldn't necessarily do a sidewalk from the gingerbread house to the bridge, for example. It just wouldn't have logical termini or enough safety benefit. There are elements of a classic village that we would continue to participate in, again, if it had connectivity from parking to an area of economic development that improved safety. But a lot of a classic village, as you all know, thanks to the department turning over Cary Road to the town some years ago, would generally not be eligible for some of our programs unless it was done holistically in a sort of a de minimis portion. And that definitely applies to the boat parking to Haynes Landing. It is essentially a local road with transportation benefits. So it's not a hard no, but it's not likely to be a priority for the department to fund unless it was in a transformative village level, really congressional directed spending, some really discretionary funds for us. So that's as we move west, we're less likely to fund parts of the project. And as I think I've stated both in the email and in these meetings before, things like paint and street lighting are important pieces of a larger project, but just don't provide the same safety benefits that separated different grade facilities do, and would not be a priority for the department. But we would continue to plan and engage with the town, and still consider similar level studies, perhaps better scoped with some additional input for Rangeley's Village as well. And if there is a point where we can do transformative level stuff in both portions of your community, then we would certainly engage on that as well.
Matt, do you have any examples that you have worked on in other towns, small villages that you guys have already successfully done this transportation study that you can give us examples of?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the ones that we referred to that we actually had built as a department prior to us beginning this village transportation village partnership initiative in 2022 are Hollowell, Agunquit, Belgrade Lakes is a great example of a downtown community that wasn't limited to a strictly highway transportation project. So many of the projects we go through and do are just to mill and fill or to pave a main street, even when there are sidewalks and curbs and things like that. But we took a real placemaking look at a community like Belgrade and added different textured sidewalks. They're brick in some locations, additional crossings with the reflective lights in advance, and really took their economic development component into consideration. Obviously, the DOT focuses really on mobility, has in the past focused on mobility, and it was on Route 27 in Belgrade was getting people from Augusta to Farmington, straight up 27. But there's such a need in Belgrade, both from a safety perspective, from an economic development perspective, and from a community perspective, to slow people down, to stop. It's not a town on your way through, but it's a place to go and be. So those are good examples. We're having, so that's on the built side, so you can go see what that looks like, and you can see their decorative lighting. You can also check out our website for some of those photos of the angled lighting that dark sky compliant lighting that also has a decorative element to it, and to some extent undergrounded utilities. I know we've talked about it on a grand scale isn't possible with transportation dollars, but those small decorative lighting, as we're already going through a highway project, definitely can be included. We're also having some success with these congressionally directed spending, all this discretionary funds, like I've said before. Both the city of Sanford 2 years ago and Wyndham this past year received raise grants on the level of $25 million. We've got a number of congressionally directed spending requests in over the past few years for transformative highway level projects as well. So we're seeing a lot of success with this program and excited to have it continue.
Anything really remote though, like we're pretty remote
Yeah.
destination, but anything more rural than these bigger towns and more centrally located?
Sure. So we are engaging with a number of communities now on those projects. They're not built yet. Monson's Village is one that I think relatively similar, both in size and sort of scale of they do have through traffic as you do in Aquasic, but your village is sort of on the outside of that elbow as opposed to both sides of a narrow corridor. That's more similar to Belgrade. We're doing some transformative improvements and placemaking decorative elements in Woodstock. That project is in its planning phase as well. So I don't have a community to point you to that I can say where we've done these smaller level, not transformative, but still substantial improvements. We also have, depending on what it is, specifically around the state routes of 4 and 17, where they come together on that corner, we do have a village spot improvement program as well. Typically, those grants are up to $250,000, $300,000, where we could look at one thing specifically and tackle it. I don't know that there was something in the study that is very clear there, but as you continue to discuss and revise your thoughts about the changes in Aquasic, whether there needed to be a crossing or to change the angle of that turn, and the town were willing to take on a large portion of that project administration as well as funding, Maine DOT may have some funds available for a smaller piece of the project on that intersection specifically.
Thank you.
Wendy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt, thank you for that information. It's helpful. What about the BIP or the Bridge Investment Program?
So I probably should have a good answer for this. I don't have, I can't speak to that.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions from the board? Public? Joe, did you have any feedback or anything that you wanted to offer?
I think everything's been covered at this point, Madam Chair. If the board
Okay.
could, for the record, say that you don't want to or choose not to apply for congressionally directed funding at this point, you revisit this project in pieces going forward. That would be helpful to Matt and I. So
I knew it was coming. Motion by Jim. Second by Sam. Any further discussion? Matt, thank you so much for all of your time and attention to this. I do apologize that we're not at a juncture that I suspect you were hoping for, but we really do appreciate all of the information and the time that you put into this.
Of course, yeah, thank you very much as well. It's been a pleasure to work on this project, and I know there are other transportation related projects we can work on in Rangeley going forward. Looking forward to seeing you soon.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Okay, voting facilities fund project. Thank you, guys. Okay, Joe is looking for a motion. Nope, go right ahead. Thank you. Nope.
Authorize the town manager to sign application for the 1401-A waiver.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Sam. Any further discussion? Any questions? All those in favor? That is unanimous. And the project agreement, Joe is looking for authorization to sign that as well.
Motion for the town manager to sign the project agreement.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Wendy. Any further discussion? Any questions? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Correspondence. I didn't see any. Old business. It looks like after requesting of Skowhegan Savings Bank to see if there was anything they could do for us, better interest rates, they have come back. Looks like they'll give us 5%, 5% on a CD for 5 months with the money that is currently in that account anyway, correct?
there are two accounts, Madam Chair. One is a checking, one is a business savings account. The total is $130,000 or $40,000.
Workman's comp 100, and then the we don't know what it is 30.
vice versa, it's actually, unemployment funds, so the town is self-insured for unemployment, that's where that money is, the smaller numbers, the savings account, the other 98,000, nobody knows really why it was placed there, it's been in that account for 20 some odd years, since 98, I think, so it's been no activity on it, other than minimal interest accruing.
Well, I have a question. Instead of tying that up for 5 months, why not put it at Franklin, 5%, keep it liquid? Or if you want to do a CD, Franklin offers a 7-month CD at a 5.25%. Just throwing a monkey in the wrench. How often you have to access the funding?
Well, considering the 98,000 has been sitting there and nobody even knows what it's there for, I don't think it hurts us to maintain that relationship with Skowhegan Savings Bank and to allow them to do this 5%, but that's just my opinion. It's not money that we've needed any use of in long enough time that we don't even know what's there anymore.
I guess.
Just my opinion.
To that, end, what do we do with that money? Just leave it in the bank? I mean.
Would you roll it into
It's not earmarked for anything.
general fund, or, I mean, that's,
Yeah, do we need it in that, as that section? Sorry.
So I think your question, I think I know how to answer your question. So if you were to decide you wanted to move it into another bank account, or even if you didn't do that, it would, if it weren't designated, it would lapse to a surplus. It'd be undesignated fund balance at the end of the year. And then you can use it for a variety of things, to lower taxes or pay for special projects, as long as town meeting authorized that.
are there any other funds out there that we don't know about?
Yeah, right.
To my knowledge, we work with 2 banks. We have Franklin, which we keep the bulk of our money in.
Mhm,
You know, we're operating accounts of their day-to-day sweep,
mhm,
which, just to clarify, is our accounts are accounted for in-house.
mhm.
You know, our chart of accounts and all of the debits and credits are here. We have a balance in the bank, and they, do cash insured sweeps, less than 250,000. That happens overnight and all over the place, quite a system. So that's where the majority of our money is. The rest of it, to answer your question, is here in Skowhegan. This is 134,000, which has been dormant since the late 90s.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought it was our responsibility to, make as much money as we possibly can safely for the people of Rangeley. So I understand wanting to keep a relationship with a bank, but I don't know if a CD would do that, if it would serve us well. And every time you reach out to someone for an RFP, you're looking for a relationship.
That's half the startup construction cost of the park right there.
First, we need to find out if it's designated funds. Somebody needs to research and find out if that is designated fund.
Right.
I'm petrified that it's a designated purpose sitting somewhere, and I mean, if we can't spend that money until we find out that answer. Which bank you put it in, whatever you do with it, that's fine, but we need to find out what that money is.
Baffles me if it said this is what, 96 or whatever.
Wouldn't it be a statute of limitations and you could just roll it into, as long as it stayed within, within the town's
I don't
hands?
believe so. If it's designated funds, it has to be used for its designated purpose. Cindy?
So, thank you, Madam Chair. What about the microloan account?
I asked that.
Okay. All right, that's just really been a sleeper situation, just thinking over, the past 9 years that I was on the board, not, and maybe the board isn't even really a part of that. I don't think we are, but it's kind of the only thing I could think of. I've had a friend that was able to take advantage of that a number of years ago. So it's the only thing I could think of just to try to help out.
I had the same thought, Sydney, and I mentioned it at more than one meeting now. I don't know if it was
Okay.
determined that it was not microloan money or that it is in fact.
My understanding is that it's not.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Cindy.
Madam Chair, are we able to access the initial account paperwork from Skowhegan? I mean, whenever you set up an account, they usually have it on, in some way, shape or form that would, and I know that a lot of times the banks for municipalities, they have to name the account. So, I mean, maybe it's as simple as just finding that out.
I can ask for the pledge agreement. I did call and ask about these accounts. That's how I found out they were from 98. Whatever, but didn't seem to be during that phone conversation, any information like that, but I did. What I'm discovering here is if you're not very, very specific in what you ask for, you may not get the answer you're looking for. So I can specifically ask for the pledge agreements for those accounts if you would like. And bring that back to you. And it may or may not have the title for which the town is going to use it.
Right.
I can't guarantee that, but if you'd like to see those documents, I can request those.
Well, I think it's a direction that potentially may offer us answers. It's probably
Worth it.
Yeah, if you could.
Well, at least you can feel secure about what your next steps are.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, do we want to put it in the 5 months? Or you still want to be able to touch on our next meeting, be able to move it, if that's so wishes the board? That makes sense.
I think if you have any reservations about the purpose of that, we should wait. That would be my recommendation.
Wait on which part of it? Wait on moving it, let it sit there stagnant, and not hold it for 5 months? I mean, it's 5 months, let's be honest, we're gonna blink and 5 months is gonna be gone. Should it be earning us 5% while we're sitting there trying to figure out what this money is? Mark,
You've got $9 million of town money in one bank. To have 100,000 or so in the only other bank in town would seem like a small step for community to leave it there and get 5% on that amount of money until you figure out the rest of the equation. So I'd support doing that with Skowhegan Savings. Thank you.
all right, folks, can we make a decision? Just one way or the other, somebody throw out a vote, somebody do something, because sitting here stagnant isn't helping any of it.
I have to abstain because I'm on.
I make a motion to move the funds into the 5-month CD at 5% with Skowhegan until we make another decision, or until we gather up all the information we need.
Motion by Sam. I'll second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? Those abstaining? So that leaves it sitting there, not earning us any extra money. Done.
I interpret that differently.
Do you?
Yeah, that was a vote that was affirmative.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, there were two in favor, one opposed. and one
I thought there had to
abstained.
be, sorry, I thought there had to be majority in attendance.
Oh.
Okay, works for me.
That was an affirmative vote.
Thank you. All right. New business, municipal reimbursement for taxes in excess of stabilization.
This is informational, Madam Chair, just to let the board know that the legislature a few years ago passed the program to stabilize taxes. They were locked in, so when they reached that milestone, they were locked, whatever they were. A year later, the legislature changed their mind, and currently they're only funding that program roughly 50%, 53%. So making you aware of that. The other thing you should be aware of is that there is at least one legislator who is taking it upon herself to introduce a bill, and MMA is encouraging us to submit testimony electronically. Just really letting you know about this, so you're aware. The total amount, I think it's in the paperwork. We're talking about $22,000 the town has not collected as a result of this underfunding of the legislative. Total reimbursement for 23 would be $49,658.38. So far, we've received 27,808.69. But there is movement at the legislature, apparently, or at least one person that's submitting a bill. If you'd like, I can submit testimony to briefly request and by testimony, I'd send an email to them requesting that they fund completely. If you'd like, I'm happy to do that on your behalf.
I should know the answer to this since I'm on the legislative policy committee, but do you know what position MMA has taken on this?
Yes. Municipal officials are strongly encouraged to participate in public hearing by testifying in person. They are taking the position that we should support LD 646 as amended, and act to fully reimburse municipalities for lost revenue from the property tax stabilization citizens program.
All right, is anyone looking for Joe to submit testimony on our behalf, or do we feel like we're in?
I think that would be great.
Joe, I think that's unanimous. Did you want it in the form of a motion, or are you
Yes,
good with?
Yeah, the motion would be good.
Okay.
I make a motion that Joe submit testimony to support, is it LD 646? For the reimbursement of tax legislation that wasn't fully funded.
Motion by Wendy, second by Jim. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Joe. All right, moving on to the calendar. Looks like we have possible quarterly meeting dates. Have you heard back from? Do both of these dates work for the other?
Both of
Organization.
these dates, Madam Chair, work for Dallas. They have not heard back from the other two communities, although they have reached out to them. So the strategy is to confirm a date with you folks that works, and then there'll be a second email or correspondence sent out from Katrina at Dallas, who's been handling this for us, to the remaining folks and say, here's the date that's been selected. You're invited to attend.
We have two back-to-backs, don't we? 6th and 7th already.
And the 8th, I at the time of putting this together, I didn't think that there's a budget committee meeting in this room from 4:30 to 6 on the 8th, but at 6 if you wanted. Actually, it won't be in this room, it'll probably be in Dallas. I won't be available till at least 6 on that night.
15th, they got park commission, but I could make it 6 o'clock.
I can't make the 15th.
But you could make an 8th.
Yeah, I can make an 8, but you guys
You can make an 8th.
can.
We could make an. Could you make an 8th?
Yeah. I can't. but
And that's at 6.
You'd have to be at 6. But let me rephrase that. I can't be there before 6, but you're certainly welcome to meet without me. I'll kind of soon, yeah.
Well, they're typically at 6, aren't they?
They
Yeah,
normally
so
are
it
at
doesn't
6.
make any sense to.
Yep.
Sounds like February the 8th at 6 works best for the majority of the board. Ethan, hope you're listening.
At Dallas, we said.
It would be at Dallas again?
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe so, yeah, big Dallas.
Okay.
Then we work for it.
So tentatively, we are in agreement that that date works for us. Okay. All right. Perfect. February 13th, the sewer commission will hold a rate increase public hearing at 5 p.m. And we need to reschedule our February 19th meeting, as the 19th is a holiday. We just want to move it to the 20th. Was that the Tuesday after? Tuesday. Do you need that in the form of a vote as well, Joe?
Yes, please. Madam Chair.
Motion move our board of selectmen meeting to February 20th.
Second,
Motion by Jim, second by Wendy. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. All right, schedule budget meetings. Joe is asking if we'd like to have budget review be an agenda item on our regular meeting agenda. Or
So-
would we prefer separate meetings?
Madam Chair, there'll probably have to be some level of separate meetings. So the budget committee is meeting for the first time this week, Thursday. The budget is just about finalized. They don't have it yet. We're hoping that they'll have it tomorrow. I hope they have it today, but I didn't get to it in the afternoon. So they'll get it this week. They'll review it. We'll meet with them. So they're gonna need a couple of meetings to kind of go through and get up to speed. I'm wondering if the 20th would work as a section of, under a section of your agenda to at least receive it as the board. So by ordinance, the way the budget process works is the town manager and my staff put together the budget. Budget committee makes recommendations on what I'm proposing, and then the board selectly gets it. So kind of want to give them enough time, that now that we have a fully staffed, almost fully staffed budget committee, make sure they have time to process it and perform that function, and still meet town meeting requirements. So I think they can have 2 or 3. I think we've proposed and will propose a couple of meetings next week with them. Also, as follow-ups.
So it sounds like initially it will be an agenda item on our February 20th meeting. Everybody good with that?
Yeah, and then we're gonna schedule separate days to do chunks of it, or?
It's up to you.
So there, I mean, I think that was kind of what Joe was leaning towards, was offering a different option of reviewing it. Obviously, we will have to still host a couple of standalones. But if it's something that we can do as agenda items, maybe we don't have to stack everybody's schedules. I mean, I know we're all used to being stacked during budget season, so it's not a huge impact. So we can certainly talk about that on the 20th if we want to move forward and pull out separate meetings for it, if we want to kind of chunk it in with other agenda items. That's entirely up to the board's preference.
yeah. Either one works, or both combinations.
Yeah, I
fine.
think a combination of
Yeah, right.
both seems like a great idea to kind of.
Has the budget committee met yet?
They'll meet for the first
February.
time on Thursday this
Okay.
week. Yep. And they're gonna, we've got it broken up into certain categories, so we're gonna meet with me and staff. Get going with that process. The hope is that by the time you get it, it's been reviewed by, the committee, the budget committee. Will be more refined than when I first created it. It will take you less time hopefully to get through. That is the hope and the goal.
Other business, monthly financials were provided. Everybody should be getting those in email. Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program.
Just an update, Madam Chair. A couple months ago, you had authorized the policy, which is this DBE program for the airport. It basically says we're required to use certain parameters when we select consultants. It has received non-substantive updates. Basically, some of the links have been modified and updated. So I've just gone ahead and put that on the website. You don't need to do a first and second reading. It's not a substantive change. You're being made aware of it, and it's being disseminated on the website. Those are the requirements. So I just wanted you to be aware. If you have questions, let me know. It is on the website currently. It's just a housekeeping item.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the update. Any questions on that update, folks? Okay. Depot Street sign. This is a follow-up to a question, correct? On
Yes.
signage or
It
use
is.
of.
And the answer is the kiosk that originally was gonna go there is gonna go in front of the old one. So the Lake to Library Trail has had all kinds of different incantations in the last couple of years, so that's why I couldn't remember it the other night with the mass, so it's also why I put it in here in writing, so you remember, or I would remember. So that's where that kiosk is gonna go. I do know that and I didn't meant to think of it when Travis was here, but the chamber is responsible for the sign at the post that's existing at Depot Street. If the board would, like me to take it down, I can direct that, or if you're okay with it being there. Apparently, there's some events coming up. The eclipse is coming up. Apparently, they are advertising that in support of businesses in town, so.
I would like to talk about that, the event itself, but we can do that.
I can put it on the agenda for next meeting, Madam Chair.
I mean, just as far as moving forward with a task force, as the amount of people that are going to be coming here and parking and, the blockage on the
Public
road.
safety
It's
and-
going to be,
Yeah.
I've never experienced such a thing. Just by Googling it, it's got quite the following.
Mhm.
And I'm worried about as far as, camping, where we're gonna put these people, having a good ebb and flow with, just the transportation. So, yeah,
It's
I
gonna
think
be big.
we should attack, prepare.
Mhm.
Madam Chair, I can provide an update. Chief and I have talked about this. We talked about it in the EMA director's office in the county probably a month or two ago when we were down there for a different meeting. Chief is meeting with EMA this week. I don't know exactly when. Fire Chief Baker is doing that. So I can give you an update when I get an update, but I have also made sure that we are at least aware of what might happen here. Jackman's put together a pre-plan that the county shared with me. It's very well written. So we're looking at this. The town itself probably is not going to put on any events ourselves. We just want to be prepared for an incident, as we learned a couple weeks ago. Be prepared for managing an incident, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It just means it's an event happening. So you're right to think about being ready for that.
But no, yeah.
So we'll make a note to bring that back for updates.
Thank you.
North Star response time. That was a question presented by a board member at the last meeting. I understand you have received some answers.
Madam Chair, there are, in your email, there are numbers from North Star. If you would like follow-up information, I can invite Steve Smith, who's now the director, up. Typically, he comes up this time of year to talk about the program and the budget anyway. You'd like to have him up for any clarification on those numbers?
Everyone good with the information provided?
Mhm.
Perfect. All right, UMA Main Cyber Range Program.
Information only, Madam Chair. I just want the board to be aware that I am working on this no-cost program with University of Maine Augusta. I learned about it at the managers convention last fall. They basically they already have the inventory, but they will be checking out our basically our security posture. They've been introduced to our current IT provider. They're doing a great job, but they've met each other, and at some point they will basically stage an event to test systems and our response to those systems. So it's going to take a while to get there, but it also does a couple of things. It lets us know internally, what do you do? Do you know what to do to come to work, and all of a sudden somebody is in your computer or trying to hold your ransom or something? How do we respond to that? And it also qualifies us for Homeland Security grants to help with those type of things going forward. So it's no cost. We will do background investigations on the students that are going to be participating in that. So Tracy actually just sent that form out today. So that's the update on that. I'll keep you in the loop. It's going to take some time. It's a student involved process. So as you know, there's semesters and breaks and so forth. So it can take a little while. But I wanted you to be aware of it, A, so that you know that I'm working on it, B, you folks have tablets and you have email addresses, so you may need to know what to do if this happens also.
All right, any select board communications? Sam?
I just have something brief. I had asked Joe in regard to the monthly financials that we get kind of a consolidated P&L and hopefully a balance sheet too, so we can see the numbers a little bit more clearly. The detail is great, but I think getting a more concise picture of it would be great. And, maybe going forward too, getting like a regular report on, the account balances, the fund balances and so forth would be helpful versus just expense and, income coming in very detailed, separate formats, just FYI.
Perfect. Seems as good a place as any. So at the last meeting, there was some mention that there was a feeling that we needed to disclose a little better for the purpose of disclosing and making sure that the public was well aware of our actions. That we should have certain things essentially read into the record. So I think the intent from here forward is to create an agenda item that is to be items read into the record for situations like when these occurred. We all came out of executive session. There was action that we took. They were sidebar agreements. We couldn't exactly disclose the full extent of those agreements at the time that we had taken this action because they needed to be ratified on the other end. And the statement was made at the previous meeting that it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we are as transparent as possible for our constituents. So we are going to add from here forward items to be read into the record. At this point, I would read the two sidebar agreements into the record. The first between the town of Rangeley and Teamsters Local 340. The parties agree as follows. Whereas the base pay of the highway foreman and transfer station supervisor is the same rate, it is agreed that the lead operator sewer will be paid at the same base rate of $26.50. Item 2 is the payment shall be made retroactive to May 12th, 2023. May 12th is my birthday. And the second sidebar that was agreed upon between the town of Rangeley and Teamsters Local 340, the parties agree as follows. The temporary schedule for police sergeant shall be 5 8-hour days, Monday through Friday. The police sergeant will be on call from 2 a.m. through 7:30 a.m. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. The police sergeant will be paid $32.54 per hour for hours worked in item 1 above. The police sergeant will be paid $100 for each on-call shift as noticed in item 2 above, except if the sergeant is on a day off due to vacation, PTO, out of the area, or sick leave, when on-call pay will not be paid. The schedule noted in 1 and 2 will begin on January 1, 2024 and shall terminate on February 23rd, 2024, unless extended by the town. Other terms and conditions of employment will be pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement. The sergeant will not represent himself as the acting chief or chief during the time this sidebar is in effect. The sergeant supervisor during the term of this sidebar will be the town manager or assistant. The sidebar is not precedent setting. That is both of the sidebar agreements as voted on by the Board of Selectmen at a previous meeting. Any questions, comments? Perfect. All right. I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session for the adjusted one that Joe requested. It's pursuant to MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Section 4056A, Personnel Matters.
So moved.
Second.
That was a motion by Jim, second by Wendy. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous.
No motion required.
Yes.
State the time and say the route, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I got that part, Joe. I got that part. All right, so we are out of the first executive session with no action to take. I'll entertain a motion to enter into the second executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Subchapter 1405. 6D, labor negotiations.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Wendy to enter into the second executive session. Joe, all those in favor? That is unanimous.
I point one thing out on this agreement that we signed tonight where for the highway foreman and transfer, and I understand the department heads all became equal, the same amount of pay. But then down here, I noticed that there was the wastewater lead operator that's suggesting a $3 more an hour than the rest.
You're being recorded right now.
Thank you. All
Sorry
right.
about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were, yep.
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
Well.
It's okay, we need a motion to adjourn. There's no action out of the executive session. I apologize.
And it is 9:09.
It is 9:09. We come out of the second executive session. There is no action to take. We need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Wendy, second by Jim. All those in favor? That is unanimous.
Thank you much. Good night, Tracy.
All right,
Night.
thanks.